I'm going to talk about the Digital Concierge and how you can use technology in your practice. I do have some disclosures. I have ownership in a couple of these companies I'm going to discuss. That aside, I'm going to try to present an unbiased view of how this can add value to your practice without adding costs and, in fact, potentially increase your reimbursement. We have struggles that we're going through. We're being pulled in a lot of different directions, and that's the burden that we're facing in medical practice today. And what we also see is that our reimbursement is going down. When you look at inflation relative to what we are being reimbursed, we have a 33% decline. So my practice, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm in Southern Oregon, which is halfway between Portland and San Francisco. This is what my practice looks like. I service a large county. Patients drive from very far. My population is often old, and they shop at a local place like this, the Blackbird Market, where they go to get their fishing license. We are busy in this practice, and I'm not showing this to try to impress you, but to more sort of show you this relative to how we are able to be busy within this practice. So based on Medicare data in 2019, we had the 14th lowest length of stay for total shoulder arthroplasties and the lowest for over 100 cases. So how do we do that? I think there's been lines in history, right? We have things that change what we do. 9/11 changed how we travel, and I actually think COVID has been a disruptive innovation that can change how we administer healthcare. We've seen how it's changed meetings, and hopefully we can use this technology to really change how we deliver healthcare to our patients. What we've seen in particular is patients are more resistant to coming into the office, and we've been able to shift our practice to more outpatient with having a higher percentage and use digital technologies to improve our practice. So we've really shifted our practice. Prior to COVID, we were trying to work on getting patients out, and now we're trying to increase the interaction between patients while we are not there. This is some of our data here that we published with Mariano Menendez. We said, here we found that we had 87% of our patients went home the same day with a low complication rate. How do you do this? You got to be captain of the ship, right? You got to develop a program. You have to provide the patients with a ton of information, and ideally, it's like the captain. They're there, but you don't see them. You have to recognize that the patient goes through struggles. It's not just the surgery. They have struggles that they experience afterwards, right? They go through a lot of questions they have to answer, from post-operative dressings to rehab, et cetera. So what we do is we try to leverage digital technology. We feel that information is really the key to delivering this in an outpatient basis. Historically, we provided that information via detailed handouts. We try to be very granular, from everything from dressings to medication schedules, getting down to the exact time. But now we've moved to doing that in a digital environment. We see that we shift how we've received information. This is an example of going and ordering food in the Houston airport, right? You don't even interact with anybody anymore. They just pick up your order and bring it to you after you've hit it on the iPad. And the same thing applies here. You can use apps to really improve the efficiency of your healthcare. So we tried to basically have the patient get preoperative planning. We optimize them for surgery, and then afterwards try to control their care. This is an example of what it looks like here. They'll have this app that will set their expectations, give them all the information they need ahead of time, establish their care plan, whether that's vitamin D, et cetera, that they take ahead of time, and then afterwards we'll do the same thing. We'll have the app deliver what they need to do afterwards in terms of taking Tylenol, et cetera, and it's day to day. Our experience at this results in reduction of calls to our clinic. This is our data here, 59% reduction in calls. Also reduction in time on calls. So this is big for my staffing. We see many of us are having staffing struggles, and this really helps us get through this. And overall, you can see here it leads to significant savings for your patients. You can bill for this. This leverages remote monitoring codes. You look at these numbers here, they're small when you look at them. But when you take this into consideration, you apply this over 3 to 4 months post-operatively, and you look at the average Medicare reimbursement for a total shoulder, for instance, you can see that you actually have a 21% increase. For a cuff, it's a 27% increase. Another option you can do to administer this is PT Genie or other tools like this. This essentially leverages the same thing where you have remote therapy. Here you also have virtual therapy. So this is an example here where you have the app set the care plan, and then you can use the same therapist throughout, whether your patient's coming nearby or whether like you have many of my patients where they're 3 hours away. So there you can then control the postoperative care phase in a reproducible manner. And this will assess the patient's range of motion, et cetera. One of the advantages for this technology in particular is that the codes leverage not only remote monitoring, but they also leverage actual visits with the patient, so you can have some significant increase in reimbursement for patients who are not seeing you otherwise. So in summary, the physician burden is increasing. Information delivery, I think, is really the key, and you can use technology to really enhance this delivery. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Why don't you stay up there? We're just going to ask you some questions.
Just a quick question. Do all your partners use this in your practice, or is it just you? And
not currently. I'm usually the test dummy in my practice. Yeah.
A great talk, Patrick. You got me on the first slide with that Stretch Armstrong. I haven't seen that since I was a little kid, and it brought back memories. My brother and I had one, and he punctured a hole in it. And I remember Mom throwing it out, and I was so mad at my younger brother. But the question I have for you is, most of my patients are over the age of 65, and we've had a hard time getting them to, use text messaging for this kind of thing. What's your experience with your patients? I'm sure you got a lot of older patients. Are they having a hard time with the technology?
That's why I tried to set the backdrop of my population. I would say in the vast majority of cases, it's really not an issue. One thing that's shifted in my delivery is that after somebody signs up for surgery, the first question I ask them is, do you have a smartphone? And that was a question I didn't ask before. If they say yes to that, then it's pretty easy. 95% of people will, but occasionally there's somebody who does not have it. But usually once they understand that there's value in it, that it's going to help them get the information or have them have better care, they will, even if they're not using it a ton, we find that they will in fact adopt it.
Zumi?
Yes, great talk, really, really great. Question was, you said the decrease of the calls. Do you have an increase in point of contacts using this application with the patients, and how many point of contacts do you have after the surgery with the patients using this tool?
That's really the point, I think, is that you can, the patient feels like they're communicating with you without you being there. With the apps, you can customize it to whatever you want. With the particular care management-based app that I was showing you, there's points of contact every day for the first couple of weeks, and then it drops off. A therapy, it would be the same. It would just depend on when you start.
I think, Howard, you should put having a flip phone into your algorithm and test to see if that predicts shoulder outcome. Patrick, so you're suggesting you can increase revenue stream and at the same time have less work for you. How does that fall within the bundle, though? Because we're now looking at a constrained dollar figure to treat this person.
Yeah, we haven't figured that out yet, but my sense is that if you can control the entire phase, especially if you're controlling therapy, for instance, you could then have better control over bundles post-operatively. Additionally, at least in our experience, I can't directly correlate it, but we've seen that we had low readmissions after COVID, even though we were being more aggressive in discharging patients home. So I think you have the potential to potentially decrease complication by providing the patients information.
Thanks, Patrick.